So this is kind of what our work is going to wind up looking like. You can see that the new layer is much richer than the initial sanguine layer, and that's because of the addition of Bistre. Bistre is a dark brown crayon, which has a darker value. But the first step is to use our pink pearl to erase out some of the highlights. Pink pearl is good because it really tears through back to the white. Conte crayon is, as I said, very waxy, so it's a lot harder to erase than Vine, and even harder to erase than compressed charcoal. It's almost as if there's a binder in the material itself, so it doesn't require as much fixative in order to keep it stuck to the page. You can use the kneaded eraser to blend, just as you do with charcoal, or to soften, but the pink pearl is going to be a lot more effective. So here you can see I'm just kind of blending with that pink pearl, softening, reducing the edges. Fairly easy to erase. Now I'm moving in, looking at my reference photo, and trying to pull out those whites. Much smaller marks. I'm not erasing the shape, I'm erasing light into part of the shape. Remember, each shape should have change over distance. This isn't about reverse coloring. You're not cleaning up everything within an outline. Sometimes you can use a soft brush that's dry to get rid of the eraser refuse, eraser trash, or you can blow on it. If you use your hand, you're going to tend to smear things, so the soft brush will get rid of the eraser refuse with minimal, destruction or damage or smearing. Here you can see I'm working on the hair again. I'm not doing individual strands. I'm looking at tracts of hair here. Her brow has some light on it. Her cheeks have some light on it. Now here you see I'm pulling out the light areas of the folds in that red gown she's wearing. You might be asking yourself, why in the world would you pull out white in an object whose local color is dark? Well, that's because Conte is a layering process. The more you layer, the harder it is for the Conte to stick to itself. So it's very important that you kind of create, for all intents and purposes, a grayscale drawing with that Bistre. Layer after layer after layer after layer. Sometimes you find the layers get clogged and muddy. In a later video, I'll show you that you have to actually erase back to the white of the page, erasing out all of that Conte Bistre and Conte Sanguine. And I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. I meant to say sanguine black and white underdrawing. I get those two confused often. Sanguine is orange, Bistre is brown. But anyway, you're depending on the paper to hold the material. Material doesn't hold to material very well when you're layering it. So that's why I'm erasing out lights even where it's going to wind up being relatively middle or dark gray. Sometimes you have to really do it tough. Put a lot of pressure on that pink pearl to get back to the white. Here I'm using the corner of the pink pearl to pull out tinier details like the fingers, but I'm still not worried about them being precise. Just trying to get the mass and the sense of light and shadow. The palms, the thumb. Now I'm getting my smaller eraser ready to do the details of eraser or reduction. You'll notice that I erased on the white page. That was just to get any excess Conte or charcoal from other drawings off the eraser and give me a clean surface to start with. You can do this on a cloth or on your jeans or just on a paper towel. Might as well do it in the drawing. Getting into those tighter secondary and tertiary details with the light now. It's really important to get this sense of light. It really gives it a sense of mass. Again, you see here I'm moving into her hair, but what I'm doing is looking for the secondary light sources, not spaghetti. Same with the folds. Remember, every shape that you do another shape within it. And that shape has a shape within it, and that shape has a shape within it. You're not just simply erasing out the primary shapes over and over again. You're correcting and you're creating variation. I think you can see that she's becoming much more precise now. And that's because I went through that process that I've been trying to teach the entire semester of working general to particular. Again, getting rid of the refuse eraser shavings. Now it's time to work on my other figure. Bring it up to the same level as the top. This is the beast ray. I actually am not going to work on that other figure. I misspoke. Beast ray is a darker brown. It's a couple shades value darker than the sanguine that you see here. If the sanguine is a middle gray, the beast ray is, say, a dark middle gray or a middle dark gray, depending on which way you look at it. So now I'm looking at my reference and I'm deciding, where are my darkest darks at? Now I'm wiping my nose. Now I'm pointing at the drawing again. I don't know what I'm doing now. Again, let me remind you, Conte over Conte tends to not adhere very well. So if you find things getting clotted or hard to darken, you might want to just brush over the sanguine a little bit with an eraser. You're looking at contour lines with this, defining shapes, specifying shapes a little bit more precisely, and putting in tonal shadows, large areas of tone. Here we go. Look beside her chin. There's some really dark tones there. So I've got my chalk on its side, using it to kind of outline the boundaries of that form. Laying in some tonal modulation. Oh look, I messed up her cheek. Oh no, the whole drawing's ruined now. No, I can just pull out my eraser and put that correct cheek contour back in there. Winds up looking better than initially. If you're paying attention, you can see my cat's tail in the bottom left-hand corner. Again, I'm blocking in areas, shapes of tone in her hair. Still no spaghetti yet. I promise you guys, it's at the very end that spaghetti starts to happen. But it won't look like spaghetti, it'll look like hair. So just like I was blocking in tone with the sanguine, now I'm blocking in tone with the bistre. A little bit of cross contour drawing there. A little bit of contouring around her wrist. Tonal contouring in the robe. Look how dark that robe is compared to her hair and face. Bascom's curious about what I'm doing. That's his name, by the way. Now here I'm getting a little bit more precise with the fingers. Looking at how they're foreshortened. Really looking at their outer boundaries. Not thinking of them as fingers, but thinking of them as shapes. Thumb now. Index finger. Tips of fingers. Just little small marks. I'm not outlining. Sweeping movements, like sweeping gesture. Palm. Root of thumb. Pinky. Looking at clearly delineated edges. And again, these aren't outlines, these are just contour reminders that I'll deal with later. Actual lines that will be replaced by implied lines. Unless there is an actual line, like in between her knees. You'll notice occasionally I smear with my finger. emphasizing the overlap of her chest to her knees, her chin to her chest. Those moments of overlap are so important for spatial clarity, just like in the skull. Now remember, her features are some of the darkest areas on the face: eyebrows, eyes, mouth especially. If you can see nostrils, there too. There's some dark on her forehead. So I'm just doing some hatching. In a fair-skinned person, you don't want to have a lot of bistre in the flesh unless there's a really strong shadow. This figure doesn't have a lot of strong shadows except for in the face. The figure in the lower left-hand corner has a lot more deep shadows, so I will use bistre more extensively to darken those in. But for the figure on top, it's mostly about the face, the robe, the hair, and those contour lines in between her knees and fingers. Now I'm blending and softening again, just like before, trying to make things a little ambiguous so that later I can be more precise when black is added. Her chin is pretty light against her chest, so I will do some bistre on her chest. And that contrast of the robe against her white skin is very strong, so an appropriate area to put a contour. Now I'm deepening the shadows in the robe. Now I'm contouring her fingers. Again, notice how I'm not doing this in order as far as the various areas of her shape. I am proceeding in an orderly fashion when it comes to how I'm using the Conte, sanguine to bistre to black and then eventually white. But I'm just kind of working the whole in an organic way. When I get bored with one area, I move on to another, trying to kind of keep everything at the same level of finish. Trying to keep my intention intentionally intentional. Holistic. You don't always have to use the side of your chalk to block in an area. There I just did some really dense hatching to get that triangle of space where her arm goes into her robe. More contouring. Now you're going to notice me kind of going over the whole robe with the side of my chalk. I'm essentially tinting the robe with a light layer of chalk so that some of that light and dark shine through. The other thing is you want the sanguine to kind of show through or peek through because this creates a nice unity. In other words, the sanguine isn't separate from the bistre, but it's mixed. So there's an actual relationship as well as a visual relationship. Blending again to soften. Soften edges, soften transitions, create transitions between one value and another. I noticed at this point that her hair was too low. It should be in a direct line horizontally with her robe laying on that surface. So I simply just put a contour line to help define that limitation. Again, we're always correcting. Now I'm kind of pushing back that chest to pull her face forward. and blending again. Sometimes it seems like I'm undoing work that I did previously, but I'm just trying to get that kind of soft underbase that I can reduce later or use contour later to add darker lines. I think at this point I'm going to switch to time lapse. You can see I'm adding a lot more dark to the figure below, a lot more bistre, and that's because her shadows are really deep. Look at how deep they are. I'm also working around the figure, working with the negative space. So you can see here that I've also reduced some light back into the lower figure to give it more of a range of tone.